Welcome back for another week of Sunday School Online. I'm excited to be here. This week, we're going to continue to talk about what we talked about last week. And last week, we talked about how because Jesus offers us his peace, we should have peace flowing through our lives. We had a Bible story last week about a man named Gideon who, in the midst of the craziness of the Midianites, remained peaceful, remained hopeful, remained faithful to God. And God sent him an angel and told him, I'm going to use you to save your people. So certainly, he had the God of peace on his side. Gideon definitely had the God of peace on his side. Last week, we also had this same memory verse that we're going to do again, and it's, peace I leave with you. My peace I give unto you. Not as the world giveth, give I unto you. Let not your heart be troubled, neither let it be afraid. And that's from John 14 and 27, verse 27. Now, this is such a lovely verse. I love it so much because it helps us to know that God is going to give us peace. And it's not like things of the world that come and go. Things in the world might break, toys break, right? I'm sure we've had some toys break. I've had my phone break, maybe a tablet breaks, computers break. Someone gives you something, it doesn't last forever. But it's very special because in this memory verse, it says, not as the world giveth, give I unto you. So not as mom and dad give to us, not as grandma and grandpa give to us, but as Jesus gives to us peace. And we know that when Jesus gives us something, it never ends. So peace is always with us because God commanded it to be with us. So we shouldn't be troubled or afraid. Now, I want to try something a little silly. Let's see if you guys can do it with me, but I want to do a silly pirate voice to do our memory verse today as something silly to help us to remember these wonderful verses that we have. I like to try and do stuff that's silly because silly sticks in our mind. So I want to try and talk like a pirate and say this verse one more time before we move on. Are you guys ready? Let's do a big R. Are you ready? On the count of 3. Do a big R with me. 1, 2, 3. R. Ahoy, mateys. Let's read this memory verse. All right, mateys. Peace I leave unto you. Arg, my peace I give unto you, matey. Not as the world giveth, arg, give I unto you, matey. Let not your heart be troubled, arg, neither let it be afraid, matey. And that's from John 14:27. That was silly. I had fun doing it though. So let's hope that we can remember this memory verse from John 14, verse 27. It's a very important one, a special one. And then last but not least, we have our lessons big idea down at the bottom of the board. And I didn't even get to fit it all on there, but I could still tell you the whole thing summed up just like this. And it says, because Jesus is the Prince of Peace, we should have peace flowing through our lives. So with that being said, I am ready to toss the ball over to Brother Dion. All right, guys, see you later.
Hey guys, welcome back. So this week we're talking more about peace, and I have a game that we're going to play, and we're going to name that storm. So I'm going to give you guys all some clues. You guys at home play too, and when I give clues, you're going to guess what storm it is. You got it?
I got it. I'm excited.
Okay, so our first clue says spinning wind on land and a funnel cloud. What is the storm?
Well, I think that sounds like a tornado. Am I right?
That is correct. Our second clue says fast winds, starts in the ocean as a tropical depression and builds to a tropical storm.
Oh, I know this one. Because I used to live by the ocean, we used to get a lot of these. Is it a hurricane?
That is correct. Number 3, our third clue says loud rumbles in the sky and lightning strikes.
Well, I think some other storms have this, but if it's just the thunder and lightning, it's a thunderstorm.
That is correct. Our fourth clue says very cold and lots of snow.
I think that sounds like my favorite kind of storm. A blizzard! We get to be all cozy inside when it has a blizzard. Oh, I love the snow.
That is right. And our last one is, it says balls of ice falling from the sky.
I know about this one, because we just had one at the castle, and it destroyed all the windows! That's a hailstorm.
That is correct. It is a hailstorm. So we just talked about all of these different physical storms. And so we may not necessarily go through physical storms in life all the time, but sometimes our life and different situations in our life can be compared to as a storm. And, knowing that, God is there for us and, He will get us through each and every storm that we go through. He will give us the peace that we need to get us through the chaos of each spiritual storm, so to speak. And I mean, God is the one who created and allowed both the physical storms and spiritual storms. So, I mean, really, there's no storm that's too strong for God to get us through if He allowed us to go through it in the first place. So we just need to, just to know that we have God's peace with us through each and every storm that we face. It's just awesome. It just helps us and gets us through each and every time. So we're going to go ahead and pass it along to Sister Kellyanna, who's going to give us another, another story in the Bible about a storm and relating to peace.
Jesus' day had been very long and tiring. He had been ministering to crowds of people who followed him. Undoubtedly, his disciples were tired as well. As it became evening, Jesus told the disciples, "Let's cross over the other side of the lake." So they all got on a boat, and with several other boats following, they started across the water. Shortly after they set sail, it got dark. Exhausted, Jesus fell asleep. Several disciples likely fell asleep as well. All of a sudden, a terrible squall arose. The wind whipped as giant waves tossed the boat to and fro. Water rushed into the boat. Although they were experienced fishermen, the disciples panicked. They had never seen such a storm. The boat felt like it was going to sink. The disciples cried out, "We are all going to die." As they all ran around, bailing out water and yelling, one disciple noticed Jesus was still asleep in the back of the boat. His head was resting snugly on a cushion as he slumbered. How could he be asleep when they were surely going to die? They cried out, "Wake up, Jesus!" Then they asked, "Rabbi, don't you know we are going to drown?" Instead of answering, Jesus stood up, probably stretched a little, rubbed his eyes, and then did something even more unexpected. He spoke to the storm with 3 words, "Peace, be still." The raging waves, thunder, lightning, and wind all immediately stopped. Jesus looked at the disciples and asked, "Why were you afraid? Do you not have faith?" The disciples gawked in astonishment. They said, "Who is this man that even the wind and waves obey him?" So, who was this man? To answer the question, let's read Isaiah 9:6. "For unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given, and the government shall be upon his shoulder, and his name shall be called Wonderful, Counselor, the mighty God, the everlasting Father, and the Prince of Peace. Well, there's our answer. Jesus is the Prince of Peace. Whether we are facing a physical storm like the disciples on the boat, or a storm in our lives where everything feels like it's falling apart, Jesus can speak to it and restore the peace in our lives.
It's not a secret, it's not a fairy tale, it's not made up. Jonah was in a whale. 3 whole days, 1, 2, 3. The greatest treasure, the word God's people wrote. It's in the Bible, when Noah built a boat. And it rained and rained. Are you ready? The rainbows in the sky to show God's promises are true. The rainbows in the sky to show the world He's the only way for your everyday. It's not a secret, it's not a fairy tale, it's not made up. Jonah was in a whale. 3 whole days, 1, 2, 3. The greatest treasure, the word God's people wrote. It's in the Bible, when Noah built a boat. And it rained and rained. The rainbows in the sky to show God's promises are true. The rainbows in the sky to show the world He's the only way. The rainbows in the sky to show God's promises are true. The rainbows in the sky to show the world He's the only way for your everyday. Now this side, give me a scream if you're having fun. This side, give me a scream if you're having fun. The rainbows in the sky to show God's promises are true. The rainbows in the sky to show the world He's the only way. The rainbows in the sky to show God's promises are true. The rainbows in the sky to show the world He's the only way. The rainbows in the sky to show God's promises are true. The rainbows in the sky to show the world He's the only way for your everyday. He's the only way.
All right, Jungle Explorers, this has been another wonderful week of online Sunday school. We're going to just take a moment to close in prayer together. We're going to pray a little bit about what we learned about today. And we were just talking about how God is a God of peace. Jesus is the Prince of Peace. He can bring peace to all sorts of storms that come our way. Sometimes when life gets crazy and scary, it feels messy, it feels like, oh my goodness, how am I gonna get through this? It's this crazy storm. Well, Jesus will come in and He will just bring peace, right? Just like our Bible lesson taught us. Jesus calms the storm. Even when the disciples, they were like, oh my goodness, we're gonna die. They didn't die because Jesus brought calm to the storm, just like He can bring a calm to the storm in our lives. So we're going to pray together in a minute here that God, we would just remember that God is our Prince of Peace. And when we feel like there's a storm coming on in our lives, we can remember to pray to God to bring us peace. So why don't we do that together right now? We can close our eyes, we can lift our hands, and we're just going to use our voices to pray out loud because Jesus loves to hear you and he loves to hear your voice. Why don't you pray with me for a minute? Jesus, I love you so much. I'm so grateful and thankful for the word that you give us, the word that tells us that you are a God of peace and that you can bring peace to our lives, that you can bring a calmness to the storms in our lives. Jesus, I pray that you would help me to remember that. And when life starts feeling crazy and it feels like there's a big storm coming on, I pray that I would remember to pray to you, because you can bring peace to every storm that I'm going to face. And I'm so grateful, I'm so thankful that I get to know you, Jesus, that I get to know the Prince of Peace, and that he gets to be in my life, that you get to be in my life, Jesus. Lord, I pray that we would be able to return back together to Sunday school again so soon. We know that you have your hand on this situation, but I miss seeing all of my Sunday school students in class with me. So I pray, Jesus, that we would be able to come back together soon. And Lord, I know that you are doing a great thing and that you are doing great things, God. Lord, I love you so much. Why don't we just take a moment and clap our hands and use our voices to give God some praise, all right? Jesus, I love you so much. Thank you, Jesus, for all that you do. Lord, you are so great and wonderful. Hallelujah, Jesus, we lift our praise to you. All right, guys, this was another awesome week, and I can't wait to see you all again next week. Have a great week, Blast Zone. Bye.